through some of it, but I'm going to go ahead because a lot of the people on this call have not been to one of these classes. So we'll go over everything because they are in plain sight. So they're supposedly hidden, but they're really not hidden. They're pretty glaring once you learn to identify them. It's just learning to spot them. You just have to train yourself, but it's one of the most effective strategies to increase your revenue on things you're already doing without creating any extra work for yourself. So I'm going to come back to this one at the very end. So the important things to know is when you're doing an FCRA violation, you need to use the correct disputing template for the specific FCRA violation. This is not a secret. The actual templates are provided by McCarthy, and I'll put it in the replay tomorrow. And these are the same CRA violation templates that we use at Credit Butterfly in our software. But you don't have to use our software, obviously, to use their templates. So you can have these templates. And that's really important. A lot of people, you don't want to spend time looking for these FCRA violations and then putting the packet together wrong, and then they just, attorney won't accept it. But if you have everything packaged correctly, the attorneys accept it pretty quickly, and you get paid usually the next month. And it's a $400 marketing fee that they pay you to send a packet with a violation for a client. And it's really a great deal for them because there's no cost to litigate because they only take cases really that they know they're going to be able to settle. So that's the thing. You get the perfect packet together. They know they're going to settle it. And then each of the credit bureaus has to pay them for all the work that they've done to do the case. So they get paid, plus you get paid and your client gets paid. But when we look at those tables at the end of this presentation, it's $1,000 to $2,500 sounds really great, but what the client's really lost in damages is usually a lot more than that, which is unfortunate. So the other things that you would want to include in your FCRA packet for the consumer law firm is the full name, full social security number of the client's date of birth, and the address, and the specific account at issue and the error. So they want the account number, the name, the specific error. And for best results, you need to be very specific. And there's usually, actually, these top 10 are truly the most common. So it's not like you have to memorize, you have to figure out 50 different issues. And usually it's going to be 3. You're going to come across 2 or 3 or 4 of these on a repeat basis. It's not going to be all 10. Some of them you don't come across very often. So what you're going to do is you're going to include any additional specific documentation. We also have a playbook that I will send tomorrow that has the actual violation and every single additional specific documentation that you need. So you'll have that. It's not a secret. So these are the other tips that are super important. You need to refrain. You need to be very businesslike and professional. You don't use language such as "you are violating my rights," "I'm very angry about this," or "this is an outrage, I'm going to sue you," that type of stuff. It can't be used. So if you were to send a case to McCarthy and you use that kind of language, they would ask you to redo a new dispute with a templated letter that they approve of. So then that would just put your whole case back 30 days. So it's better to do it right the first time. But even if you mess that up, it can be a learning thing and you can do it properly the next time. But since you are at this class, you won't do that. So make sure you include proof of the error if it's needed. And like I said, I have that playbook that has all the little things that are needed for each one. If you're disputing a 1099-C issue, which is when they issue you a tax write-off for the company, that you'll need to include the copy of that for the dispute letters. So the first one, I'm just going to move this because now it's okay. So this is a very common one. The credit report shows that there's a balance due, but this has been settled or paid in the past. So when you do your client consultation, and this is where you would find that out, because you would go through all the negative reports and they would say, "Hey, I paid that 6 months ago," or "I paid that a year ago." So then you would ask them for a statement showing that you paid that, a settlement letter, payment confirmation, a bank statement, and then putting And don't worry about reading all this information here because I'm going to send you the dispute guide from McCarthy and it will have all this in there. So you don't have to worry about memorizing everything right now. This is a lot of information. So the main thing right now, which I imagine if you think back to your clients that you've had, is that you probably have a lot of different instances where this may have happened, where on one or all of the credit bureaus, the credit report showed a balance due, but it had already been paid. So that's probably one of the most common ones. Second one is just the balance after the creditor has discharged the debt and sent you a 1099-C that you have to pay as income tax because the debt was forgiven for you. This one doesn't come across a lot, but this one, if you do have one and they're still reporting that debt after the 1099-C, it's a slam dunk. It's super easy to get off. And you just package that up and send it to McCarthy. And typically, what you would do is when you find one of these violations, you would then dispute it with the credit bureau. And then 30 days later, if they didn't remove it, then it would actually be a real violation. So you would have a potential violation when you first noticed it, you dispute, and if they don't correct it within 30 days, then it's actually an FCRA violation and it would be something that they could litigate.
Can I ask a question on that? So does that mean when it's a charge off and it shows a zero balance, or is that something different?
So it can, so a charge off, so the original creditor, then it gets charged off, it would have a zero balance. And then if it got sold again, it wouldn't be sold again. So if that, so yes.
So I have one that did a charge off. It has a zero balance, but the customer asked for a 1099-C and they would not send it to them. Because
Well,
wouldn't they have gotten that?
they're not required to have a 1099-C. That's something
Okay.
that they do. That's a bookkeeping thing that they do at the end of the year to write off debt. And they're not required to do that. So if it's actually charged off and reporting accurately, now if they've sold it and there's a duplicate account, there's a duplicate account where it shows a balance and then it's the same account, but it's under a different name, you might be able to from something like this.
Okay.
Because an account like so the original creditor can't show a balance as well as the next one that they sell it to. They can't all be showing balances because that makes it look worse.
Great.
So you would essentially have sending copies of all disputes that ask them to delete one of the accounts. And if they didn't do that, then this would be a violation.
Gotcha.
And so then you have so this is kind of what we were just talking about. The debt buyer and the original creditor are both reporting a balance due. So the debt buyer can begin reporting a balance, but the original creditor must stop. They both can't report the debt as due at the same time. So that's what we just mentioned. And in our software, so we are having our FCRA tracker coming out soon. And the idea is that when you upload a credit report, it identifies any potential violations. And then once you do a round of credit disputes, if it was not taken off, then the tracker would alert the fact that it is now a violation because the 30 days had passed and the report had not been corrected. So if you have an unknown account on your report, this is likely due to identity theft or most likely. So this would be where you might, for the required documentation, you might need an FTC ID identity theft affidavit and a police report. And so this is really important to know that to make sure that your client understands this is definitely an FCRA violation if it's identity theft and you need to get this to the legal team. But the reality is that if you just have to make sure your client understands it needs to really be an identity theft. You can't be a false identity theft affidavit because that puts them at risk as well as yourself. That's a risk. That's like a felony. So that's not a good thing to do. But it is really important because really and truly, you're not going to get a lot of identity theft removed unless you go through the legal route for your client. So another one that's not very common nowadays, but who knows, it might come up again. Who knows what we'll see in the future. Short sale listed as a foreclosure. So this is an FCRA violation because a short sale is not a foreclosure, and if it's listed as such, it definitely harms the client. So this is another big one, debt discharged in bankruptcy. So your bankruptcy, so say you have a client fresh out of bankruptcy. So that's a great client because within 6 months to 12 months, you're going to have, they'll probably can easily be at a 700 score. However, so part of that bankruptcy cleanup in that first 6 months after the bankruptcy is looking and seeing if everything's reporting correctly, that it was included in the bankruptcy and that there's no balance owed. However, if it's not right and they do not update it, and that's a really, so that I can see this one being very common because of the fact that all three bureaus tend to simply ignore most people's disputes now. So if you had a person who went through bankruptcy, they had things that were not reporting correctly, you disputed it, and you got back a letter saying, hey, we didn't dispute this for whatever reason. You send that to the legal team, and then they can, that should be a violation, and they can redispute it if they feel like it. But and everybody's asking about the sending a copy of the PowerPoint slides, and that's fine. I think I definitely will do that. So let's see. So an account to report. So there's a 7 years of statute of limitations on negative accounts.
You really want to know it's
Accounts don't fall into this, so you don't worry about the negative, the positive accounts. You leave those on the credit report always. You never, those do not fall off. You don't want them to, because that shows your credit. But, I think somebody's on.
I was trying to feed up my sister and told her some guy is trying to pick me up.
I'm not sure where I can't. I don't think I can mute somebody. So the negative accounts must be removed after 7 years. So obviously, if this one is 7 years old, you can actually have that removed. And
Coming from Albert Wolf.
coming from Albert, Albert, mute yourself. I can't do it because I'm the only. Oh, I think it might be better now. So the last one is the authorized users report. So you say that you have a client who has an authorized user. They're an authorized user on someone else's account, most likely their spouse or another family member. So the activity should report your own activity should report on your own credit report. Sometimes everything shows. That can be a problem if it shows, if the actual user of the credit card has a very high balance on that credit card and it puts your utilization ratio up so high that you might not be able to qualify for a loan. So you might want to do this for something like that. But generally speaking, an authorized user, if it's not hurting the person's credit and they don't have much credit, you probably wouldn't want to dispute it because part of the FCRA violations is that they delete, obviously, what the violation is. So if it was actually helping the client, having that authorized user, if you used it as an FCRA violation, that would go away. So you might have to think really carefully about doing that and not just randomly doing that for every single authorized user that shows all the activity. So anyway, I don't know if anyone has any other insight into that they wanted to share, but I think that's pretty much what Stephanie and the consensus has been. You generally leave those alone unless it's really hurting your client and you can't get it fixed by the credit bureaus on your own. So I'm going to go backwards real quick and I'm going to show you so this is what happens to your clients. So the paid settled account still shows a balance. So there's obviously it's going to hit the score. And so any loans that they get, whether it be cars or housing or whatever, is going to go up. So that's how they can find that there's damages. And so a lot of this where it shows up in the client's credit report is old credit cards and medical debts. So where it's paid settled but still shows a balance. So the 1099-C is when the IRS has canceled debt, but it's still owed but it's showing that it's still owed, but it's already been canceled. So those would be charged off cards, forgiven loans, things like that. Duplicate account reporting. So this is simply the same trade line twice. And it can be tricky to find these sometimes. They might look a little bit different, but they typically have the same account number. But this is a double ding on your utilization, which creates damage and also the history. Debt buyer and original creditor both reporting. Obviously, it appears twice, it inflates the debt. I guess portfolio recovery, that would be an example. Portfolio recovery is a debt buyer and then the original bank. So unknown. So if for identity theft, things to look out for to find this one would be a sudden score drop and a random lender appears on their credit report that they have no idea who it is. So obviously, so the short sale represented as a foreclosure. So it prevents any kind of refi. It tanks you score probably more than 100 points and it's on a mortgage trade line. Post BK debt balance still shows. So it prevents them from ever reestablishing their credit. So literally, if someone has had a bankruptcy and they don't get their credit cleaned up afterwards, they could go several more years without any increase in their score, which is terrible. So it's so important. I feel like that's one of the real key areas that I think a lot of people should focus on. Credit repair is just making sure that those post BK buyers or BK people that went through bankruptcy, actually their credit report reflects what is new, and then they start that rebuilding process. Obviously, these obsolete accounts, these negative items stay on there and they're from old collection accounts. A mixed file. Oh, I don't know, did we talk about this? But a mixed file is when you have a junior and a senior or a common surname. So those are super hard, if not impossible, to get removed unless you go through an attorney. So the best thing that you can do for a client when there's a mixed file is just send that to the attorney. They will take care of it and you can actually get that. You can probably dispute for months and not get anything resolved. So that would be something that I would definitely take to the attorney. And the authorized user is pretty much what I just said. So you're an authorized user on your spouse's card and they made late payments. Now it looks like you have late payments and it should not be showing up because only your own activity should show up on your credit report. So that is definitely when you would use this, because if once the original credit card holder starts making late payments and that will start hurting you, and it doesn't matter how long that credit history shows if it's all now bad, because you're not going to be getting a loan. So these are types of typical damages and also damages to the client, as well as some settlements that they get. So these paid and settled balance reports, paid and settled balance. So that's when you have the card that should have been paid or settled with a zero and it's still showing a balance. That can actually raise the interest rate for a home just 0.5%. But a half a percentage point over a 30-year, $300,000 loan equals $31,000 to $35,000 in extra mortgage interest. So they can definitely prove damages, the law firms for sure. So account reporting. So this will drop someone's score, and on an average car, it's going to add approximately $3,500 extra. So these are the type of damages that the law firm is going to talk about. And then there's also these are just known things. So the debt buyer, so there's they get $1,000 just for statutory damages, plus the balance is deleted. So that's what the consumer gets. These are typical. It's not like for sure. Shorts misreported the damage to them. They had a 100-point score hit. They may have gotten a loan denial or, whatever. So it says when a post BK balance shows up, they say that they can get between a $1,000 and $5,000 typical individual settlement. But, and so that was real interesting. The 1.62, this is when there was actual will on the part of the credit that they showed that they did not fix this, and they should have fixed it. They didn't, and there was a lot of different things that these things went to court. So I'll just tell you this, that's when they go to court and they litigate it and then they get jury awards. That's not going to happen for most of these violations. Almost all of them are settled. Very few actually go to court. But if they do, there is a very good precedent that some very large settlements can happen. So that's why there's these three credit bureaus are very quick to settle all of any FCRA violation. So I'm just going to go back through. So this is the McCarthy law. So I will send out the in case anyone has not registered, if they're interested. And I'm going to find out about the training and support as needed because I know they have training and support. So I'm just going to find out how everyone can if they have of tutorials and stuff, and find out how we can access that. Because I think that's a really great, they're such a great resource. And do provide good support. They have paralegals, and you can usually ask for paralegals, and you can ask a lot of questions. I'm just going to look through the chat. See, I know there's a lot of messages. Yeah, paralegals do all the work anyway. Yeah, I'm sure that's true. So, and the wealth of information. So let me see. I'm going to go ahead and escape out of here. Let me just stop my sharing. Can everyone hear me now? Somebody couldn't hear me earlier. I hope that everyone can hear me now. Okay, good. I'm going to share. Well, first of all, I'm going to go ahead and share so this is my thought. I'm like marketing. And so my thought is that I'm going to go ahead and share this is that if I were, expertise or knowledge about FCRA violations, I would really focus this to my client base and get people to sign up for credit monitoring. For instance, so you just some ad copy guidelines, and these were actually, I used ChatGPT to and I thought they were pretty reasonably good. So your report could owe you money, and you could easily use these either not just for Facebook ads, but also just for email copy if you have a database of previous clients. Report could owe you money up to 1,000 to 2,500 per error. Let's find out and fix it. So they use the hook, pain, promise. They use some legal authority, and then always a call to action, which is the CTA. So these are some headlines. You can test these too in your own emails and stuff. So you get paid for report errors. Is your credit hiding $1,001? Stop paying for bureau mistakes. Earn cash, raise your score, and with money signs. So I'm not going to read every single one of these, but I like some of these. Like you may be entitled to cash plus a deletion. Let's look. So one of the things, I don't know how many of you use the free different credit monitoring where you could actually have someone just sign up free for 7 days, or even if they sign up and they pay, then you quickly look at their credit report. That gives you a really good edge, because if you're just not saying, hey, I want to do your credit repair, it's going to cost you $1,000 or $500 or whatever you charge, but you're saying, hey, I will spend 15 minutes with you and we will look at your credit for free, and I will tell you if there's a potential violation on your credit report. And easily would find out, because if they had a collection that had a balance and they had told you, hey, I paid that a year ago, then you would say, you know what, if we can, that documentation and I can dispute this, we could then send it to the attorneys, and this would be, a FCRA violation if the credit bureaus did not remove it. And you could, that's another thing. You do not want to come across looking like you're an attorney, but that you work with attorneys. So get paid, free FCRA check today. I don't know, this is your first time, a lot of you. Have any of you that are doing the FCRA violations, have you been marketing that in your trying to get clients?
No, but it'll be great to have it to market.
Yeah, it's a really good, I'm gonna look and see what these messages are. Okay, so you have, well, that's great. Awesome. Yeah, educational, because you can share all of these things because it trust, because for them, because, know how to do this. And plus, if you have a chance to look at their credit report, find a lot of other things. They may not be violations, but they're easily fixable if or to, as a client. So here's some other, and I'm like I said, I'm going to have this whole thing. I made this guide in Chat GPT specifically for this class. And I thought it was pretty good. So they even talk about, now I'm not an ads expert. I have someone else do my ads. But I liked some of their ideas. I mean, gave some good ideas. I thought this is just good things to kind of think and think, well, maybe, be a good tactic. Maybe I have a lot of old leads never went anywhere that, people might entice them to, to get a bunch of people just signed up for your credit monitoring. You're going to get paid on that. And a lot of these people, especially if they have identity theft, if they aren't already on an identity on a monitoring service, they would probably keep it because, if you had something like that happen, you're pretty nervous. Compliance rails, you don't want to ever guarantee anything in credit repair. But you can say may, could, typically I wouldn't say much more than 1,000 because pretty much $1,000 is pretty much what they're going to get. It could be up to a 2,500, but typically it's going to be just 1,000. And avoid the deletions. If they do get a deletion, if it's an FCRA violation and it was successfully settled, you can't, attorneys are going to accept once they aren't. You can pretty much know if you have all the required elements of the need for the file, you can pretty much rest assured that it would be accepted. But in the beginning, there is also some of, and so some of them in the beginning may get, or that you may have to, they may ask you to do something first. But generally speaking, it's pretty straightforward. That's why it's surprising to me that more people aren't really using the FCRA violations, because you can probably easily, if you're doing 10 or 20 clients a month, you could probably easily find 3 to 5 a month, just, day-to-day work. So what is that? 3 to 5, say you just 3, that's $1,200 extra a month. That's a lot of money, that you're getting. If you have hundreds of clients, you can even go back and look at you can start spotting these violations. You can send them in and you can actually get paid. If you have a very large database, you might have thousands and thousands of dollars sitting in your database of your clients that you have right now. Some people who have more than 100 violations. So different templates. So one of the case studies was what they was named Maria, because she had a mortgage, applying for a mortgage. She had a 7-year-old medical bill that still showed on her account that should not have. And so they settled that account, and they settled for 2,000, and her scores jumped 47 points. So you just kind of a little case study, maybe one of your own clients or somebody that you've heard of, and then you want your report checked, now these are, and then they have to obviously sign up for a credit monitoring program that you offer. I mean, all of you already have your credit monitoring affiliate links, that you would give one of those, and then you would get paid on that. And hopefully they would also turn in a client. I mean, so here's a 15-minute FCRA check. Know 100% of your payment, delete errors, plus boost your score. And then this one, they used a little scarcity, only 10 free scans left. I'm not sure I'd call it a scan, but I don't know what you would call it, but something kind of like that. Only 10 free scans left, claim yours. I thought that one would be pretty good because honestly, there's not too much downside to doing that. If they could just not want to do the credit monitoring, but if you had that 7-day free one where they get a 7 days or something, then it might take away that objection. You might be able to successfully run a Facebook campaign with that 7-day free one. That might be a bad idea. So this is retargeting. So once you're doing Facebook ads, how many of you does anyone do Facebook ads on this that are tonight? Because honestly, we had tried, Stephanie had a credit repair business and she was never really successful with Facebook ads for the credit repair business. But there are lots of people that are super successful with Facebook ads. They have $1 million businesses just for doing Facebook ads. So there's the ways to do it. But yeah, everyone will receive this as well. And this is really, like I said, just for ideas. I would not start with Facebook ads if you've never done them. I would probably just use some of these headlines to your own marketing that you're doing, wherever that is, and as well as your emails, like some emails to see if anybody that was in your lead base now had wanted to do a free, FCRA scan, what about an idea. So that's essentially everything I have. So I had mentioned earlier that we do have the FCRA Tracker coming out where you'll be able to upload your credit report and it will scan your report and flag potential violations. Then when you re-import 35 days later, approximately, it will then flag if the credit bureaus have not resolved that dispute, it will flag it as an actual violation, at which time you would just package it together and send it to McCarthy or consumer law firm you use. Anyway, that's it. And so I wanted to thank everyone for coming tonight. And if you have any questions, we do have a free trial going on. I will also send that tomorrow, the link for our free trial, or you can simply go onto our website and sign up for the free trial on the website, which is Credit Butterfly AI. And thank you, Brenda. You're very welcome.
Hi,
Hi.
I have a question, and this I posted it in the chat, but I'm guessing you didn't see it. So I started, was going to really like this credit repair business, but then I came across something that kind of stopped in my tracks, and that is that it's supposedly illegal. I mean, everywhere, but it's supposedly illegal to charge people for credit repair. So I'm super confused.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah. Well, it
Like,
is kind of scary because one of the reasons we created our software, but it's right because you can't charge in advance for services. So you
right,
have to provide something of value, which would be do a credit consultation. A lot of people, I know the way Stephanie does it is she does a credit action plan, which is what our software does. She's pretty much automated her own credit action plan
okay,
and it would take usually about 45 minutes to go through everything and look at it. The software does it and you
okay,
need to look at it and make sure it fits that specific client. You want to look at it and kind of know that it fits their specific goals.
okay,
And you would have more information than the software would because there might be an extenuating circumstance. So then you could go over that with the client and then you could charge for that evaluation. You would be giving them that credit action plan with all the steps that they needed to do. So say they need
okay,
down to this. So you would have all these things that they needed to do, plus all the things that you were going to do. So that's valuable in itself. So some people charge, I think Stephanie charges $295. Some people charge $395, different, want for your business. You have to go through the laws of your own state,
hmm
to be compliant with credit repair. For PROA compliant and state compliant agreements for 49 states. It is not legal to do credit repair in Georgia. So I would probably not, unless you're, or something, I would do credit repair and attorney, but you could, even if you lived in Georgia, you could do credit repair in other states. You would then need to look and see, does this state they require to be a credit services organization. So many states, I think 32 states require you to have a bond. So the
okay,
bond can range from anywhere from $5,000 to $100,000. And
yeah,
then would pay like from dollars to maybe $1,500 for the highest bonds, and you would need to have the bond. You would need to register in certain states. There's just some regulatory things that aren't that difficult. And our software actually works, helps. You can't even send one of our compliant agreements unless you filled out the bond information because it's not compliant unless you have a bond for the state that you're sending it to. So,
Okay.
and a lot of people don't know those things. You make sure that you just do your disputes and then you charge afterwards. Laws, it's just, you have to be cognizant of those, but there's a lot of people that are doing really ethical credit repair, and a good job and a good service. And then there's the opposite, obviously. So if you really are doing a good business and you have a good reputation in your community and I think local credit repair does really well because then you can build that trust. You can get, when Stephanie and I had our credit repair business many years ago, we all of our leads from loan officers. So if you
That's a good idea.
yeah, if you develop really good relationships with loan officers and you understand what they need to happen in order to get their clients approved for a loan in 3 to 6 months, that's a super good angle because we had hundreds and hundreds of leads coming in a month, probably thousands. Did a couple hundred actual pairs a month. So that's probably had like 700 leads. So if you get a pipeline of leads from like real estate agents, some people do the bankruptcy attorneys. Those are it's pretty much developing those personal relationships. Sometimes people have, friends in there and that's how they can get started because you can say, hey, send me one of the clients that you had to deny for a loan. I'm gonna, free for them. We used to do that for the loan officers. We would say, hey, give us some of your really worst clients and we'll review their credit. I did one or two for free for a lot of them and got business from them for years, literally. And or somebody asks if you need a license or certificate. It depends on the state you're in, and it's like likely bond, and then there's different things. But so I put in, you can have a great evening, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. And I'm gonna give you so many resources, you probably won't know where to turn. You'll have so many different things to look at. But if you just focus on the 2 or 3 that are most common. So anyway, well, have a good night, everyone.
Thank you. Great information. Looking forward to the handouts.
Yeah, you'll get a lot of them. You're very welcome.